It's the second day of Prime Minister Pushpa Kamal Dahal's India visit today, which is packed with agendas, political parleys and interactions. All eyes are on the visit as the country awaits agreements and understandings with India that will support its economic and development aspirations while strengthening its bilateral relation with the long friend. Good morning, I'm Sarah Sapsanama. Let's begin with the headlines of the hour. Prime Minister Pushpa Kamal Dahal to meet with his Indian counterpart Narendra Modi, followed by bilateral parleys and then meetings with Indian President and Vice President. Government aims at saving 45 billion rupees as it gears to scrap and merge 20 institutions. Over 12,000 government officials in a state of uncertainty. The US House passes a bipartisan debt limit bill to avoid a default. After weeks of tense negotiation, the bill now heads to the Senate. And Nigeria shocks Argentina with 2 second-half goals to eliminate the Under-20 World Cup hosts 2-0, while Italy gets the better of England 2-1 in round of 16. Crucial meetings are scheduled today on the second day of Prime Minister Pushpa Kamal Dahal's visit to India. The Premier is currently meeting with his Indian counterpart Narendra Modi in Hyderabad House. Prime Minister Dahal arrived at Nilgiri Hall of the Hyderabad House to meet his Indian counterpart. The two Prime Ministers are set to hold a one-on-one talk, which is expected to last for half an hour. Delegations from both the sides will then hold bilateral talks, which will be followed by an exchange of agreements. The two premiers will jointly also inaugurate a few projects. Although there are expectations that a long-term energy and trade agreement would be struck during Premier Dahal's visit, along with permission to install transmission lines to export electricity to Bangladesh and also air road permits, progress so far on these issues have not been encouraging. It has been understood that the Indian side has maintained its hesitancy in discussing on the agendas tabled by Nepal. According to a higher official of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, it is highly likely that the Premier's visit will be limited to an exchange of goodwill. After a joint press conference by the two Prime Ministers, India is to host a lunch program at Hyderabad House. Prime Minister Dahal is to meet with the Indian Vice President Jagdeep Dhangad at 4 p.m. and then pay a courtesy call to Indian President Draupadi Murmu. At 5:30 p.m. later today, the Premier is to address a program organized by industrialists and business persons of both the sides. Yesterday, India's National Security Advisor Ajit Doval and Foreign Secretary Binay Mohan Quatra had met with Prime Minister Dahal. Premier Dahal is scheduled to travel to Indore in Madhya Pradesh tomorrow and return home on Saturday. In our Public Voice segment, we'd ask people in several provinces what suggestions they have for Prime Minister Pushpa Kamal Dahal, who has reached India for a 4-day state visit. Let's take a look at what they had to say.
Public Voice.
देशको अहित हुने गरी सन्धिहरु गर्न भएन
लिपुलेक र कालापानी हाम्रो हो यसलाई फिर्ता गर्न प्रधानमन्त्रीले पहल गर्नुपर्छ
कूटनीतिक तवरले नेपालको हित हुने कुरा गर्न चाहिँ म सुझाव दिन्छु
नेपाल र भारतको सम्बन्धलाई चाहिँ अझ सुमधुर र प्रगाढ बनाउनु पर्यो
नक्साको विवाद छ यसले समाधान गर्न एकदमै टिका पुर्यायोस्
नेपाल र भारतको चाहिँ एकदम व्यापार नजिक होस्
भारतले एक खालको हामीलाई हेपा प्रवृत्ति गरिरहेछन् ठुलो भाइ र सानो भाइ भन्ने कुराहरु त्यो नहोस्
सम्झौताहरु जुन देश जनता र देश विपरीतको भएको छ त्यो चाहिँ नगर्दै हुन्थ्यो
राष्ट्रमा आघात हुने कामहरु चाहिँ नगर्दिनु होला
यहाँ उत्पादित सामानहरु पनि उता चाहिँ निर्यात गर्दै हुन्थ्यो
भारतद्वारा जति पनि नेपाली भूभागहरु मिचेका छन् एम्पियाधुरा लिपुलेक यी तुरुन्त फिर्ता होस्
हामीले उत्पादन गरेको विद्युत भारतले कसरी लिन सक्छ त्यसमा पनि उहाँहरुले सम्झौता गरेर आउँदाखेरि एकदम नेपालको लागि र हाम्रो देशको लागि र नेपाली जनताको लागि एकदम सुखद पक्ष हुनेछ
बोर्डर लाइनमा चाहिँ जति पनि समस्याहरु आएको छ त्यो समस्याहरुको चाहिँ समाधान गर्दै हुन्थ्यो
सीमा विवादहरु छन् र त्यहाँ पाएका नेपालीहरुको दुःखको विषयमा उठान गरेर उहाँले त्यसको निरूपण गर्नुहुनेछ
राष्ट्रको राम्रो हुने कुराहरु गरेर आउनु
यताको सामान पनि उता जाओस्
नेपाल भारत सम्बन्ध सुधारको लागि कूटनीतिक पहल गर्न सुझाव दिन चाहन्छु
बेलौरीको हाम्रो बाटो पिच हुन नदिएको अवस्था छ भारतले त्यसको पनि सीमा विवादलाई समाधान गर्नु पर्यो
सीमा सम्बन्धी विवाद समाधानका लागि कूटनीतिक छलफल गर्नु पर्यो
कालापानी र लिपुलेक बाटो चाहिँ भारतीय सेनाहरूलाई चाहिँ तुरुन्त चाहिँ त्यहाँबाट हटाउनको लागि चाहिँ पहल गर्नुपर्ने
हाम्रो देशको अर्थतन्त्र बलियो बनाउनको लागि लगानी भित्र्याउनु
गलत सम्झौता नगरिकन देश र राष्ट्रको जनताको हितमा छलफल गरेर सम्झौता गरेर आउन्
नेपालको सार्वभौम सत्ता र भौगोलिक अखण्डतामा ठेस पुग्ने कुनै पनि काम नहोस्
It's time now for our segment Public Pulse, where you text us with your opinion.
Public Pulse.
The question is, what is your take on the certification of the citizenship bill by the President 9 months after its endorsement from the previous term of the Parliament? Your options are A, constitutional move, B, against the parliamentary process, and C, unnecessary politicization. The voting is on. Type NEWS, select your option A, B or C and send it to 34001 to share your opinion with us. Welcome back. Through the budget for the upcoming fiscal year 2023-24, the government has announced of scrapping and merging 20 institutions for failing to perform in an efficient manner. Around 45 billion rupees is expected to be saved by scrapping and merging these institutions. However, there are around 12,153 staff in the 18 institutions to be scrapped. 5 years ago, the Public Expenditure Review Commission had conducted a study on 300 committees, councils, boards and centres and furnished its report to the government with the recommendation of scrapping 32 of them, merging 18 and handing over 45 to the provinces and local levels. The report had expected such scrapping, mergers and handover to save 300 billion rupees annually. The government, which had ignored the report of the Commission for almost 5 years, has finally declared of scrapping and merging 20 institutions. Of these institutions, the Post Office has around 11,000 staff, while the Railway Board has just 1. The district election offices have 550 officials, while the statistics offices have 400. Questions have been surfaced regarding the need for the committees and councils that have become a recruitment center for political parties and operate on government grants. The Commission had also suggested reducing the number of departments to 35 in the centre and having only 16 ministries. However, against the recommendation, there are 22 federal ministries at the moment. At a time when the government is making preparations to scrap the entities for their inefficient performance, officials of such entities have claimed of having done well. Only a few officials of such entities have welcomed the government decision. Most of the revenue generated by the government is spent for the remunerations, incentives, pension and social security of the employees. The nation has to depend on internal and foreign loans for development. This is why the government had embraced the idea of scrapping entities that have only added burden to the state coffers and failed to perform in an efficient manner. A divided U.S. House of Representatives has passed a bill to suspend the $31.4 trillion debt ceiling on Wednesday, with majority support from both Democrats and Republicans to overcome opposition led by hardline conservatives and avoid a catastrophic default. The Republican-controlled House voted 314 against 117 to send the legislation to the Senate, which must enact the measure and get it to President Joe Biden's desk before a Monday deadline, when the federal government is expected to run out of money to pay its bills. Republicans control the House by a narrow 222 against 213 majority. The legislation suspends, in essence, temporarily removes the federal government's borrowing limit through January 1, 2025. The timeline allows Biden and Congress to set aside the politically risky issue until after November 2024 presidential election. It would also cap some government spending over the next 2 years, speed up the permitting process for certain energy projects, claw back unused COVID-19 funds, and expand work requirements for food aid programs to additional recipients. Hardline Republicans had wanted deeper spending cuts and more stringent reforms. Progressive Democrats, who along with Biden had resisted negotiating over the debt ceiling, opposed the bill for a few reasons, including new work requirements from some federal anti-poverty programs. The U.S. is to send $300 million worth of additional weaponry and equipment to Ukraine, focusing the latest military aid package on air defense systems to help Kyiv fend off Russian aerial attacks. Russia pledged to continue to improve its air defense system in the wake of the Tuesday drone attack on Moscow. Ukraine denied any direct involvement. The Kremlin said the situation is rather alarming in the Belgorod region. At least one person was killed and 6 injured in strikes on the Russian territory, officials have confirmed. Ukrainian officials say Russian forces have stepped up shelling in the Kupiansk area of Kharkiv, where the front lines had moved little since last autumn. U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin and his Japanese counterpart Yasukazu Hamada stressed the importance of unity on North Korea and other issues they face in a meeting in Tokyo on Thursday. Speaking at a joint press conference in Tokyo with his Japanese counterpart, Austin told Hamada both nations are united by shared interests and common values. He said both are undertaking important steps to modernize alliance and strengthen deterrence. Hamada added that he wanted to deepen security cooperation with America and South Korea on the backdrop of North Korea's missile test and satellite launch. America underlined to defend its allies from the provocation of North Korean regime. Austin added it was unfortunate that his Chinese counterpart had declined to meet with him in Singapore later this week and that he would welcome any chance to engage after criticizing China's recent actions in international air and waterways. Austin was visiting Japan before heading on to Singapore for the Shangri-La Defense Dialogue later this week. He will also visit India and France. Now, Taiwan and the U.S. will sign the first deal under a new trade talks framework yesterday. Both governments have said, boosting ties between the two at a time of heightened tensions with China over the democratically governed island. Taiwan and the U.S. started talks under what is called the U.S.-Taiwan Initiative on 21st Century Trade last August after Washington excluded Taiwan from its larger Pan-Asian Trade Initiative, the Indo-Pacific Economic Framework. Taiwan's Office of Trade Negotiations said in a brief statement the first agreement under the framework would be signed in Washington today, U.S. time, but gave no other details. The U.S. Trade Representative's office said Deputy United States Trade Representative Sarah Bianchi would attend the event, but also did not elaborate. Last month, the two sides reached agreement on the first part of their trade initiative covering customs and border procedures, regulatory practices, and small business. After the initial agreement is signed, negotiations will start on other, more complicated trade areas, including agriculture, digital trade, labor and environmental standards, state-owned enterprises, and non-market policies and practices, the USTR has previously said. The pact is not expected to alter goods tariffs, but proponents say it will strengthen economic bonds between the U.S. and Taiwan, open the island to more U.S. exports, and increase Taiwan's ability to resist economic coercion from China. Beijing has denounced the trade talks, as it does with all forms of high-level engagement between Taiwan, which it claims as its own territory, and the United States. Taiwan strongly rejects China's sovereignty claims, which Beijing has been trying to push on Taipei through repeated military activities, including war games around the island. Let us now take you live to Hyderabad House in Delhi, where Prime Minister Pushpa Kamal Dahal and his Indian counterpart Narendra Modi are to address the media. Expected, in fact, to be dealt with during Premier Dahal's visit to India, but a breakthrough has been expected to be unlikely as the Indian side has maintained its hesitancy. Nepal's women's national cricket team is currently playing its third T20 match against Malaysia at the YST UKM Cricket Oval in Bangi, Malaysia, and is looking to clinch its second victory against the hosts. The five-match series is at 1-1. In the first match, Nepal performed poorly to go all out for 50 runs and lost by 5 wickets. Rubina Chetri staged an all-round performance in the second match to make a comeback by defeating Malaysia by 7 wickets. A win today will give Nepal a 2-1 lead in the series. In the Europa League, Sevilla claimed a record-extending 7th Europa League title as they beat Roma on penalties at a raucous Puskas Arena in Budapest. Gonzalo Montiel, who scored the winning penalty for Argentina in the World Cup final against France, repeated the trick for the Spanish side, following a 1-0 draw with a retaken spot kick after Robert Ibanez and Gianluca Mancini had missed for Roma. Montiel's international teammate Paulo Dybala had deservedly put Roma in front during the first period, racing on to Italy defender Mancini's incisive pass to expertly steer a low-effort past Sevilla goalkeeper Yasin Bono into the bottom right corner. However, the Serie A side, who also saw Leonardo Spinazzola test Bono before the break, relinquished their control of a testy encounter which saw 14 players and coaches, including Mourinho, booked. And Sevilla drew level 10 minutes after the break with Navas's cross from the right, deflecting off the unfortunate Mancini into his own net as they repeatedly pressed forward for an equalizer. The Spanish side have now won all 7 of the finals they've played in the competition, with captain Jason Navas involved in their first triumph against Middlesbrough in 2006. Time now for the weather update. That is all for the moment.